What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and today I am excited to have onto the podcast for the first time Avi Wolfman Arendt. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you nailed it, Trill.
Nice. I'm very proud of myself right now from WHYY, the local NPR affiliate, and I just want to say, huge Sixers fan. I follow you on Twitter. You always tweet good shit, so I'm glad to have you on the podcast. What's going on?
Thanks, man. Yeah, first time, long time. I'm a listener. Love the pod. It's my sort of unhinged Sixers listen. And for me, like, I don't work in the world of sports. Like, I work in the world of journalism, but not sports journalism. So for me, this is like an escape. And this podcast is like just the perfect fucking escape from the drudgery of daily news.
Oh, man, I really appreciate that. And also, I am excited that we can go full sicko mode after this game one, because it feels like going into last night, we have house money. We have no Embiid playing in Miami. Honestly, like, obviously you want to come out and have a great first game, but it did feel like a lot of the pressure was off the team. Even Doc was talking about it before the game, kind of like, we're not going to be afraid to try shit. We're going to throw stuff at the wall. We're going to see what works. And we're going to go from there. And I felt like going into the game that was the right mentality to have. You don't have your MVP candidate. You don't have, one of the greatest players of the Sixers from the past 30 to 40 years. And we go into the number one seed Miami Heat, who are kind of a rival, not really. And then right before the game, Deandre Jordan is announced as the starter. And from there, my whole vibe shifted. Yeah. Everything just felt like going from Joel Embiid in the starting lineup to Deandre Jordan in the starting lineup is just unbelievable how bad that disparity is. It's just absolutely crazy. So how are you feeling going into the game last night, and how are you feeling today?
Yeah, you hit on it perfectly. That quote from Doc in the pregame about trying shit was like manna from heaven. I thought to myself, this is the approach you have to take, because the way you should approach the first two games of the series, in my mind, is basically like an 8 seed trying to steal a game on the road from a 1 seed. Like, this version of the Sixers without Joel Embiid would have been, I might even be being charitable here, probably an 8 seed, probably not even in the playoffs. So how do you do that? You try weird shit. You shoot threes and embrace variance, because you might lose by 40, but if you win one game by 4, that's all you needed to do. And instead, at least to start the game, what we saw was really the most conventional option, which is play the most traditional veteran center on the roster. They kind of got away from it in the middle section of the game when they made their run. They brought in Paul Reed, and then they went small, and that's what got them back in the game.
Yeah.
Then when that showed even sort of a little bit of ricketiness, Doc reverted right back to Doc.
Yep.
And they lost the game.
And I want to put an emphasis on this, because I am not absolving everyone on the team for how they played outside of DeAndre Jordan and Doc Rivers, because I think that is what people perceive when I tweet that DeAndre Jordan is the worst player in the NBA and that Doc Rivers is a madman for playing him.
Right.
Like, it is true that George Niang was terrible last night. He was one of my biggest concerns going into this series. It is true that James Harden needed to be better, and we need him to be better without Joel Embiid if we want the offense to look somewhat normal. All of that is true. Even Maxey didn't have the greatest game. Like, there were a lot of players in the rotation that didn't play great. There were a lot of things that were kind of all over the place.
For sure.
Having said that, it feels all moot when you think about the fact that, like, we're just playing 4-on-5 on both ends when you put out DeAndre Jordan. Like, he played 17 minutes and was a negative 25, and that is not an exaggeration. It's not even like something that stands out, like, and is just like an aberration. Like, watch the game. He doesn't move his feet on defense. He cannot contest anything at the rim. He had 2 blocks the whole night, and I honestly, like, didn't really think he had any sort of he doesn't have vertical athleticism left. The only time he can ever catch lobs is when he stands in the dunker spot and goes directly up, and he's spoon-fed from James Harden or Tobias Harris. And it just feels like, what is the point of thinking about all this other stuff when we're playing 4-on-5 on both ends with a dinosaur center who is completely just like, you can't switch with him. Like, one of the things you said was like, when they went on their run, they went small.
Yep.
And they went with they went with the zone when they had Paul Reed in. And like, people were like, well, that's what got them back into the game. And I'm like, but you can't do that with DeAndre Jordan. Yep. Is the thing, is like switching and zone and all of those defensive schemes that you can use to try to throw Miami off, which it did. Like, you can do that with Paul Reed because he has long arms. He can get into passing lanes. He can recover in time to make blocks at the rim. You could do that with Thibault roaming around the perimeter with him. Like, you cannot do that with DeAndre Jordan. So I think that there was a false equivalence of, oh, they got back into it because of the zone. They got back into it because they took off one of the worst players. And when he came back in, they immediately gave the lead back up again.
Absolutely. I mean, look, DeAndre Jordan's probably one skill left is as kind of a vertical spacer as a lob threat on offense. Kind of. And I'm really qualifying that. I do, if you had 2018 James Harden, there would be a little bit more value in that player because that player was getting by the first defender consistently, making that backline defender make a choice, and then either getting a layup or a lob. That's not James Harden anymore. Where he really shines now is as a playmaker, threading those pocket passes to bigs on the move or using the threat big on the move to set someone up for three. And the defense just doesn't – they're not even trying to do pick and roll with DeAndre Jordan because they're just putting him in the dunker spot because DeAndre Jordan as a roller has just – creates no fear in the defense, right?
Yes.
Paul Reed gives you a little bit of that. He can catch the ball and do something. Joel Embiid obviously gives you a lot of that. And so it seems like the one thing that DeAndre Jordan could kind of give you is less and less relevant with this version of James Harden. And so you just end up with just a mismatch of players. And I'll pull this stat out here. There are 70, I think I have this right, 72-man combos that the Sixers played over 100 minutes with this year. So this is like 2-player combos. DeAndre Jordan and James Harden were dead last out of 70 in net rating. They were a -17 in the regular season together. You add whatever happened last night, and it has to be worse than that. Yes. So there are like combos of like, Shake Milton and Isaiah Joe that have better 2-man net ratings. And this is with James Harden, who I still think is obviously not old James Harden, but is still a good player.
For sure.
To be that bad as a center paired with a pretty good lead playmaker is embarrassing.
And a lot of that has to do with what exactly you're talking about. The advantages that are created by having him play are moot on both sides.
Yep.
Because offensively, you're not fearing him as a lob threat anymore, which was one of the major things. Also, he doesn't even rebound anymore. He doesn't even attempt to box anyone out. The only reason he ever gets a rebound is because he's tall. Like that's it. Like it's just like sometimes the ball will bounce into his hands. He doesn't jump for rebounds. He doesn't box out. He doesn't do anything that any one of the backup centers could realistically do. Or even if you put Tobias at the 5 or Niang at the 5 like they did, and they had that slight little run, like there's no difference really. And rebounding is like the weak part of this team, the weakest part by far. I think we all can agree on that. But when you have someone who's giving you nothing offensively, defensively, you have to run drop coverage with DeAndre. You have no choice. Yeah. That's going to make it so that if Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, guys who have notoriously, and James Harden, who have notoriously struggled with screen navigation in their career, have to fight over screens to contest shots, that's just going to lead to wide open pull-up shots for Gabe Vincent, for Tyler Hero, for Jimmy Butler, for everyone. We saw it at the beginning of the game last night. Like, they're just going to be walking into pull-up twos the entire first half. Put Paul Reed in there, put Charles Bassey in there, even go small, even sometimes with Paul Millsap, who also looks completely cooked. At least sometimes you feel like he's making the right play. Like he can make a smart play because he's a smart player and he doesn't rely totally on his athleticism. Like, I feel as though it gives us no optionality on either side. And because of that, like, a lot of this is like everything we're talking about right now. During those 17 minutes, they got absolutely fucking destroyed. I mean, to put it in perspective, like it was kind of funny. He put DeAndre back in for one possession, and immediately there was a foul on a 3-pointer that wasn't actually a foul on a 3-pointer, and it made his plus minus look even worse than what it already was, which I appreciated.
But I wanted to spotlight that play because when I saw that was Matisse Thybulle who committed the phantom foul on Tyler Hero.
Yes,
and that play was so emblematic of the problems that DeAndre Jordan causes for this defense. That was a high screen. DeAndre Jordan was nowhere near the screen. You go back and look at the tape, just nowhere near it because he knows he can't be. If he goes up too high, Hero's past him.
Yeah.
And Thybulle, who already has a tendency to gamble a bit much on that particular play, you could just see the gears turning. Like, I have to try to do something to contest this shot. And it puts him in a vulnerable position. It turned out he actually made a fucking amazing play.
He did, yeah.
And did actually tip the ball and not hit his head by about this much, like a centimeter. But he got called. And the reason he's in that vulnerable position is entirely because of the scheme they're playing and the personnel. Entirely. That is why he has to try to make that kind of savior play. And that's your better defender. Not to mention, I mean, there's much worse guys that could be trying to challenge that shot. And you just named them. Yeah,
and that's why a lot of the times we were seeing, like, there were blown rotations from, like, Maxey had a few blown rotations and left Tyler Hero open. It's not to say this was all DeAndre Jordan's fault, but when you consider the personnel, like, your best option is just going with either some sort of scheme. It's just switching. Like, it's really just run zone or switch because, like, look, guys are going to target Maxey because of his size, and, like, there could be disadvantages to that, but ultimately with the shooters that the Heat do have and with the actions that they do have, that to run the bigs out of the paint to try to get them out on the perimeter, you're really going to need to lean into that switching because James Harden is never going to fight over a screen. He just won't. We know. And once again, that's a fault of his game for sure. 100%. But until you have Joel Embiid back, that is your best option. And if you're really afraid of Miami beating you with switches, then you're cooked anyway. Like, you just have to lean into the one thing that we possibly can do. And if DeAndre Jordan is out there, which, by the way, the comments after the game driving me fucking nuts, dude. Like, Doc it's like a personal vendetta he has against us now. The fans, the media, everyone who is not him is an idiot. Like, the person who was asking this question was Rich Hoffman. Before it was Derek Bodner, like, two of the smartest beats on the fucking team. And it's just maddening to me that he thinks that he can just be like, look, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you don't like it. We're playing this player who should not be out on the court. And it's just that stubbornness and that unwillingness to ever change or adapt that makes me feel like this series is going to be down 0-2 before Joel even gets the chance to play.
Yeah. And like you said, these are not gotcha questions from Howard Eskin. These are like standard questions from journalists asking about a pretty pivotal part of the game in which the Sixers got their doors blown off. And it's just immediate defensiveness and sort of arrogance. And yeah, it just sucks. And I've been in the position of having to ask people like that questions. And I know it's dispiriting for the person asking the question too, but you have to ask. And I think, like you said, you talked about zone, you talked about switching. Do those things leave you vulnerable to offensive rebounds? Yes. But I think your baseline attitude going into these two games is Joel Embiid is by far our best rebounder. We will not have him. We will lose that part of the game. Where can we try to win? Where can we gain marginal advantages to make up for what we're going to lose rebounding? Instead of being like, let's kind of try to patch this rebounding thing with a guy who hurts us in all these different areas. I know we're belaboring the obvious at this point, but it's just like, it is the most frustrating part of watching this particular game, because other than that and some cold shooting, which I do think will regress to the mean at some point, like, they played actually an okay game.
They did. That's the most frustrating part about this, is it felt like they could have stole this game. Yeah. And I know it's easy to focus on all of the bad that happened, but like, there were stretches where, like, this is the best basketball we've ever seen Tobias Harris play by far. Like, I'm not even just because the shots are going in. Like, I think one of the things I talked about earlier this season when we had the version of Tobias, which was like fake mellow Tobias, as we called him, instead of Tobias Harris and Barnes, was that we talked about it, and it was like all of his value was completely tied to the ability to shoot and score.
Mm-hmm.
And now, yes, the shots were going in yesterday, so of course those mid-rangers are going to look better and all that stuff. But the process of Tobias's game is so much better on both ends now. Just like defensively, like honestly, Jimmy was roasting him early. Like he was getting those screens, he was getting around him, he was doing whatever he wanted. At a certain point, Tobias just locked in, and there was, and part of that was all the stuff that we're talking about. They were able to go to zones and switches, and that helped. But like Tobias defensively was fantastic again last night. Multiple possessions where he's shutting guys down, sealing off the paint, making it so that he's getting his hands when ball handlers are trying to drive, all that shit. And then on top of that, you have the fact that he's just catching and shooting with no hesitation, still moving the ball. And when he's doing his little bullshit mid-range pull-up stuff that we used to drive us nuts, at least now it's like he's doing it in the right way. He's targeting smaller players on switches. He's getting deeper into the paint. He's making the right moves and the right like passes and scoring. It's amazing to watch, and it sucks that such a great Tobias game could be ruined because of a few runs that were completely avoidable.
Yep. It sucks. And he's definitely been playing a lot better, and a lot of credit to him, honestly, for sticking with it. It was a pretty shitty year for him. I did feel like there were points in the middle of the game where it worked out, but it was a little too much Tobias time, like starting to pump fake out of those threes again and get to the mid range and like turnarounds. And I kind of hope that that's just sort of a temporary thing to sort of bridge the gap between now and whenever Joel comes back, knock on wood. But overall, like obviously he was the best player for the Sixers last night. Overall, a two-way player. And, you know, if he continues to play like that, they'll have a chance. And I was overall really encouraged with the way he defended Jimmy Butler. Jimmy tried to get him on the pump fakes a couple times, didn't go for it, just, you know, anchored himself in the paint. And once Jimmy, if Jimmy gets into the paint, and I, you know, from watching Jimmy for that year, like once he tries that pump fake and fails, the possession is kind of fucked. Like it's sort of an all or nothing gamble on Jimmy's part. I'm either going to get a foul here or I'm going to have to pivot around on one foot looking for an outlet pass
right
seconds while I'm in the lane. So he did a great job. And if he continues to guard him like that, they'll have some opportunities when they get back to full strength to try to steal a game and get back in the series.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that the one thing I will say, and I kind of agree that because even when James Harden isn't James Harden, the result of a possession with James Harden when he has the ball and he's running the offense is generally speaking going to end a lot better than when Tobias Harris, even Tyrese Maxey, because he's more efficient as a scorer, doesn't turn the ball over, even if he gets tunnel vision sometimes and whatever. That is true. But when it is nice to know that you can go to Tobias. This is something Andrew Underberger talked about when he came on the podcast, which was having that Tobias that you can go to for a run in the middle of a Joel Embiid game or a James Harden game or whatever. Harden didn't have it last night. And once again, I do think that he needs to be better. I'm not absolving James Harden of had a bunch of bad turnovers when he was trying to drive, wasn't able to drive nearly as much as you would like him to. He was relying on the step back a lot. He did get fouled on that one play by Bam Adebayo and they didn't call. But once again, if you rely on fouls, you're not going to get them called sometimes. Sometimes the whistle's going to go in your direction. Sometimes it's not. And the one thing I do think that has been completely blown out of proportion by the media is that, yes, we did get James Harden because we wanted to make a push this year. But the Sixers were never winning anything with James Harden if Joel Embiid was not playing.
No, of course not.
So I think that as we've seen, as something that we discussed outside of, I think, two of those Raptors games, the Sixers offense was absolutely amazing with Joel Embiid and James Harden on the court together. In the playoffs, in the regular season, all of that stuff. This part of his career as that facilitator, playmaker type, as you talked about, that has the ability to score occasionally instead of in bunches as a volume guy, is 100% better set up to play with Joel Embiid and play off of Joel Embiid than to be the main guy, as we knew going into last night and as we now have confirmation of. So I'm not freaking out at James Harden based on one game that he didn't look amazing without Joel Embiid, because I know James Harden can play really well. Like, that was my whole thing when I was talking about it on Twitter with people earlier. It's like, it's not that I am like not criticizing the other players on the team. It's that I know almost all of them can play better, and they have played better. DeAndre Jordan has not, and I'm not willing to give him the opportunity because he's never been good on the Sixers. It's been 5 years since he was a plus in net rating when he's on and off. Yep. And I'm willing to give James Harden a chance when Joel Embiid comes back. I'm willing to give everyone a chance. Niang will play better. He'll shoot better, even though I don't think this is a series for him. I know Danny will shoot better. I mean, Thibault at least presents some sort of value if you're able to run that zone, because he's such a good zone defender that you might be able to get away with some of the offensive limitations. But like, those guys I trust will be able to figure things out over the course of this series, and that's why I'm not as frustrated with their performance last night as I am with his.
Yeah, and I feel the same way about Harden. I mean, to me, it was sort of on the lower end of my expectations, but it was within the range of expectations. Like, the only analysis I care about in the long term for this team is what is the potential of the team with Joel Embiid and James Harden playing together? And is there a better option than that? To me, people talk about, would you want to give James Harden $50 million in the offseason? And I know, like, that's a conversation for another day. But to me, it's not – I don't think of it as giving James Harden that money. He'll be the one on the checks. But yeah, it's about when you invest that money, you are investing it in that tandem, and you are saying – we think this tandem has the potential with some tweaks to the roster to win a championship. And I think that's probably the best bet that the team can make long-term. As a solo act, Harden is just like not an elite player anymore. Like, no. Unless there's something on that hamstring that heals over the offseason, and I would not bet on that, he just isn't. But he is a guy that turns Joel Embiid, already one of the best weapons into the game, into a fucking super weapon. And that's how you win championships. We're basically taking a great player and sort of like amplifying him to an insane degree. And that is what James Harden does.
Right, exactly. That's a perfect way to put it, is like, he elevates Joel Embiid. He elevates all, and when Joel Embiid and him are on the court, they elevate everyone who is around them offensively. And I do think that there is a level of concern for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not pumped. I'm not like sitting at my watching my television getting excited when James Harden goes 4 for 17. Like, I'm not excited, but he is ultimately at that stage of his career where he's going to have nights like that. It's the playoffs. Everyone has nights like that. Like, yep. It sucks. And but then again, we get the game 6 James Harden, who came out looking fresh, was efficient, was quick with his decisions, getting to the rim, hitting step back threes. Like, you're going to have nights where he looks like that too. And you're just hoping that everyone around Joel Embiid can do enough. And like, this version of Tobias Harris, what Maxey showed in the last round, what Harden has shown in flashes, like, this team is good enough to win a title. And it really didn't even take me until like seeing it in the Raptors series, where the 3 games where they look dominant, like, and that Raptors team is not a contender, but that Raptor team's way better than the first round opponents we were getting before.
And also just like a tough defensive puzzle to solve. And when I watched that series, to me, yes, there were lows in that series, but when I looked at that series, what I came away with was there were long stretches of that series where the Sixers played at a level that I have really never seen any Sixers team almost of my lifetime play at, like, especially on offense. And like, if you have that as a high watermark, that gives you hope that the team could be a championship team. I'm not saying they will be, but it gives you hope. Anyways, I mean, I think it's just like the point being that the James Harden that I'm watching now, like, I just had never had any expectations that he would be like the guy, the heliocentric James Harden that bails them out of a game or two without Joel Embiid. He's not that dude anymore. If you had any like illusions that he would be that guy, like, trash them now. That's just not
yeah, it's just not going to happen. Like when you talk about investing in the duo of James Harden and Joel Embiid, like, you're also building into the fact that, like you said, you can build a roster around those two that makes more sense. Tyrese Maxey can continue to get better and take leaps. Like, there are things that are built into this idea that aren't just like, okay, it's just you two, figure it out. Like, there will be other things that can be done. And like, I've been hypercritical of Daryl Morey's just like his focus on getting a star so much in the Ben Simmons thing is like, you then made it so that all of your depth was gone and you had no backup plan at all in a season that you claim to be wanting to go for it all. And once again, while I do think the team is good enough, like the things that could potentially be their downfall are the things we're seeing right now, which is like a coach who will never admit he's wrong and will continue to play the player. Like, you cannot give him DeAndre Jordan. You cannot give him guys who you know he's going to play in these situations, because it's going to make it so that it's just impossible to overcome if he's never willing to adapt and change. And something we talked about before the podcast was like watching the other side and watching what Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley have done with the Miami Heat is like the complete opposite mindset. And yes, Miami's a glamour market and they got Jimmy Butler as a free agent, and like the Sixers, even though we traded for Jimmy Butler, would never be able to do that. Like, that is just a luxury that they are afforded because they are in Miami and because of like the fact that they're this place players want to play. But they also drafted Bam Adebayo, who was fantastic last night at the end of the lottery. They drafted Tyler Hero at the end of the lottery, and he was fantastic last night. And they played them from a very young age and put them in positions to be on a contender. Yep. From their rookie seasons, they were playing real minutes. And the Sixers have drafted guys who have talent and just never are given the opportunity, like Paul Reed. And your examples that you said on Twitter were perfect for that, for the guys the Heat have played in their first two seasons.
Well, think about this. So the Heat are also down a starter and still a good player in Kyle Lowry.
For sure.
And they have to find a way to replace him. Is Kyle Lowry Joel Embiid? Of course not. But they've got to find some way to replace him. And they have several options to do that with guys who were, I think all three of the guys I'm about to name were undrafted.
Yeah.
Because those guys got exposure to the NBA in the regular season, played through their mistakes, and now are more playoff ready than the average undrafted guy would be. I'm talking about Max Strus, who is not a one-for-one Kyle Lowry replacement, but does some things, shot creation, and gives you some offensive juice that Lowry might give you. Gabe Vincent, who's I think a little closer in prototype to Lowry, and I thought acquitted himself pretty well last night and actually did a pretty good job on Harden. And then in terms of sort of like wing guard type players, they didn't even play Duncan Robinson, who's another guy that they developed.
Crazy.
And the thing with Duncan Robinson in this series, right, is that they my guess is that they don't want him and Hero out there at all times because it gives the Sixers a guy to hunt. And they have the luxury of just not playing him because they have other guys. And when you look at the history of specifically Strus and Vincent, who really, I mean, they had sort of like very, very small cups of coffee the year before Paul Reed was drafted, but they basically started their NBA careers at the same time as Paul Reed. They each played more than 500 minutes their rookie seasons as undrafted guys, right? I think I have that right. I don't think either guy was drafted.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
And then this year, they each played over 1,500 minutes. Meanwhile, Paul Reed, in his two NBA seasons combined, with a track record of dominating lower levels of competition, demolishing lower levels of competition, has played less than 500 regular season minutes total. And Paul Reed has now played in 10 straight games. Before this stretch, he had never played in more than 7 straight games, never appeared in more than 7 straight games. And now we're talking about 2 COVID injury-ravaged seasons where there were opportunities, and the organizational sort of like lodestar is just give those opportunities in minutes to sort of like middling blah veterans instead of mixing it up and maybe giving half those minutes to a guy like an Andre Drummond or Dwight Howard and mixing in from time to time, maybe say that, list Dwight Howard out with a knee injury one day and just see what Paul Reed is. And they just don't seem to have any interest in that. And in this series, the Heat are capably like filling in a starting role with guys who I don't think the Sixers would have ever had an opportunity to show that they were NBA players.
No, not at all. And there are other guys on the team who, like, I don't know if they're as talented as Paul Reed, but like We saw Charles Bassey at a certain point, and he looked great, and then he just never played. Once again, it goes back to the rhyme or reason thing that I always talk about. And I understand Doc loves his vets. He's always going to give them opportunities and reps and all that shit. But there's no rhyme or reason to anything Doc Rivers ever does. Ever. That's my biggest problem with him as a coach now. I've realized it. It's like, okay, so for example, I talked about it in, I think it was the last episode or the episode before that, like the Paul Reed plus the starters lineup was fantastic for 2 games.
Unbelievable.
And then they just never played it again until the final game when it played again, a variation of it, and it was good again. And it was like, well, why didn't you just play this? And now we have an opportunity to play it when it actually matters, and he doesn't do it to start the game. He's not going to do it to start game 2. Paul Reed was not given the opportunities to, once again, a point that you brought up, that other people brought up on Twitter. Maybe he would have figured out how not to foul every 5 seconds if he had gotten those opportunities in the regular season and had more reps against NBA players, against the Bam Adebayos, against guys who he's going to be guarding in the playoffs. And this like foul thing is definitely, it's something that like pretty much every young center does, like except for like the truly elite defensive centers. Yeah. Every young center does this. Jaren Jackson Jr. still does it. Like Karl Anthony Towns, I know he's not a great defender, but like he does it. Like Robert Williams could literally never stay on the court for the Boston Celtics until this season because he was either injured or he was fouling all the time. Yep. They like over time, guys figure this stuff out. And like while Paul Reed was the second to last pick in the draft, like it's clear that his talent is way above that level and he should have been given opportunities. And like, I had a tweet from December where I said, look, I don't even know what his role looks like on the Sixers. I'm not even sure it's going to work, but he clearly has too much talent to not give the guy a shot. Like I was Bassey over Reed because I thought of the archetype that worked better, but there was clearly one of these guys should have gotten a chance to prove they can do something for an extended stretch. And it just never happened.
It was like everyone knew after they made the Harden trade and they got rid of Drummond, who was a capable backup, that we were running like headfirst toward a brick wall. And that brick wall was there's no backup center, capable backup center. And instead of slowing down, we just never broke stride and ran right into the wall. Like the wall was like a quarter mile away and we just ran straight into it. Like it doesn't make any sense. And I want to go back to something you said about fouling. Like Paul Reed, the reason not to play Paul Reed with the starters, according to Doc, is the fouling. And it's legitimately a pretty big issue, right? Like he fouls a ton. I think he's fouling like 10 fouls per 36 in the playoffs.
It's bad. It's Norvell Pell bad.
It's Norvell Pell bad.
Yeah.
But you have to ask yourself, why is Paul Reed fouling that much? Some of it is his nature as a player, of course, but some of it, this is what all young bigs do. And I want to hit you with the stat. Joel Embiid, a defensive savant, his rookie year fouled 5 times per 36. That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And all he needed was some exposure to NBA game speed and a little bit of sort of a visual look at some of the tricks that crafty guys use around the rim to draw fouls. And he got better at it. Will Paul Reed get a lot better at it? I don't know. But you could have figured that out over the last year and a half, 2 years. And instead, they just sort of had him down the G League posting 25 and 15 for no apparent reason.
That was when Bassey got sent back down there again at the end of the season. I was like, why? Yeah. What? We know Bassey's good enough to destroy down there. Like we know Reed's good enough to destroy down there. Let him prove it at the next level. Like I'm sick and tired of fucking watching 30 and 37-year-old backup centers, however old DeAndre Jordan is and Paul Millsap. Like I'm just sick of it because we knew this was never going to be the answer and we never got the opportunity to see it. And it was something I was screaming when we signed DeAndre Jordan a few months ago. Once again, DeAndre Jordan has been so when you look at on-offs, his on-off has been horrendous. Right. Since 2017, 2018. And he was on good teams. He was on the Lakers. He was on this year's version of the Lakers was not good. But I will say that it's not like you played with LeBron James. You got all of the opportunity in the world. He played with the Nets last year and was bad. The Nets were very good last year and he was horrendous.
Played with James Harden, with the same guy.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, this is why I'm so mad at Morey for even letting Doc get to the point where he could do this. Because I'm just so frustrated because it's like, once again, going back to what you were saying is like, we need our best guys to play better and we need our role players to hit shots. Like our shot quality last night, I felt like was pretty good. Like
yeah,
I felt
exactly.
like, yeah. And like Miami shot quality in the first half was dog shit. Like it was not good at all. Everything was a contested shot. They were like, we were scrambling, recovering, contesting everything. And it felt fantastic. It felt like when they made that run that they were really in the game. And now it feels as though it's going to be an uphill battle just to steal this second game, because now Spoelstra has a game of footage that he can go to and say, this is what they want to do. This is how we're going to attack them. Because, by the way, if DeAndre Jordan is protecting the rim, he gives up 80% at the rim, basically, which is insane. It's literally, I joked and I said, everyone is Giannis when DeAndre Jordan is on the court for the Sixers. Like everyone is just the greatest finisher we've ever seen in our lifetime while he's on the court. And like, once again, not to put all of the blame on him, but like, I do feel as though if we had a coach who was flexible, if we had a coach who was trying these things out over the course of the season and was willing to fail a little bit more, maybe if our seed was a little bit lower, like I really wouldn't give a shit. Like realistically, tangibly speaking, what is the difference between the 4 seed and the 6 seed? Like, we could have experimented more and lost 3 more games and ended up the 6 seed, and we'd probably be in a much better position, because it's one of those things that, like, when I had the Pound the Rock guys on, they talked about Nick Nurse does this, where he's like, Udoka did this year with the Celtics. Like, the beginning of the year is a time to test to see what works and what doesn't work, and we're going to try to drill these playoff things into their brain from game 1. And the Sixers, while Doc is a good enough regular season coach to raise your floor, he's never going to try those things in the regular season. And even if he does try them every once in a while, he's not going to stick with it, because there's no rhyme or reason for absolutely anything.
And I think like we should clarify a little bit, because like the reason anyone listening to this would be like, why are these fucking maniacs talking about DeAndre Jordan for 35 minutes? Like, it's DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
To me, it's what he represents about the organization and the coaching, which is no willingness to experiment, an over-reliance on veterans, and an disinterest in almost like a repulsion to trying to win at the margins and find little advantages that might help a good team become a great team. And instead, it's just like, this is familiar. This is sort of like what I know. This is consistent, I guess. And we're just going to fall back into that. Like, you can do that if you have an elite team. You can get away with that. Sixers are not an elite team. They have a potential to be maybe a title contending team. They need to win on the margins. They need to find little advantages. They need to find guys on rookie deals who no one really expected to be positive contributors, but are positive contributors. And they've just punted on those opportunities.
Yeah, that's definitely the most frustrating thing to me, is like what he symbolizes is the perfect way to put it. Because it's like, I even think about it like this, is like, if Joel Embiid never got COVID, would we have ever seen Paul Reed play this year? Nope. Which is an insane thing to say, because, I mean, look, like, you know, he's going to have like I said, I tweeted last night, Paul Reed does some very stupid, bad things and some very good, great, awesome things that like are creating advantages, creating turnovers, making sure that we can get out on the break. Offensive rebounding, he's by far our best offensive rebounder on a team that desperately needs offensive rebounders. And I wasn't even like a Paul Reed guy. I was just like, he has talent. See if there's something there. And if Joel Embiid doesn't go out, and like another thing that is just like driving me nuts about this season is the fact that like I sat here all season and like we were competing against teams when Joel Embiid was out that we had no business competing against. We almost beat the Bucks. We beat the Grizzlies. We beat the Heat. We beat good teams without Joel Embiid this year, and we competed against a few others until the end when the talent just basically ran out. And it's frustrating to be sitting here saying, like, all the guys that helped us compete in those games, the Nuggets, we beat the Nuggets in Denver. Charles Bassey had Jokic in hell for the second half. I watched the whole game. And at the bar when we were recording our live podcast, and it's like, those kind of games stand out in my mind now as like this could have been like learning opportunities, but expanded throughout the year, where we would be sitting here with a lot of more options and just the ability to like have some, like, if you want to throw shit at the wall, like give guys opportunities throughout the year and they might be ready for the moment. But for now, it's probably not going to happen.
It's too late. It's too little too late. And at this point, you're playing Paul Reed, who's going to make a lot of stupid mistakes. Maybe you throw Charles Bassey in there, but before, I'm pretty sure I have this right, before he played a little bit last night, he hadn't played like a meaningful NBA minute. He played a little garbage time in a game against Boston, but he hadn't played like an actual NBA minute since like January 31st. Like, is the guy going to be good? Like, I don't think so. Like, no. It's not like you can't just like step in and start playing NBA playoff basketball after having sat on your ass for 3 months. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And so they're in a terrible position. And it's funny. It's like, it seems like Doc is saying, I can't trust these young guys, so therefore I have to play DeAndre. But you can't trust the young guys because you played DeAndre. Like, you created you created your own dilemma. And there's just no acknowledgement of that. It's also funny. I think like Doc like seems to really like be hyper aware of mistakes made by young guys. And I think a lot of coaches are like that.
Of course, yeah.
The stupidest foul last night was committed by Paul Millsap, who grabbed Victor Oladipo on the shoulder while he was shooting in front of everybody. Like one of like the least aware, most like rookie looking mistakes I've seen by a player in a playoff game, at least in this run by the Sixers. It was a play that made no sense. And it was like by the oldest guy in the center rotation. So
yeah,
like,
but in Paul Millsap's defense, he was born the same year that Rocky 3 came out. So you gotta like think about what really it creates the advantages at the highest playoff stakes. You know what I mean? Yeah, like it's unbelievable, dude. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's the jokes that we had before were like, if you don't know the lyrics to an NSYNC song, you're not in Doc's rotation. Like if you ask Paul Reed what his favorite I don't know, early Eminem song was, he wouldn't know any of them. And Doc is not letting it fly.
It's actually a great I'm trying to remember when this was from, but at one point they were playing, I think maybe Let's Get It On, like in like a shoot around, and like Doc bought Paul Reed in front of like the whole team was like, who is this? And I think Paul Reed said Marvin Gaye. Like the whole team laughed at him, and it was just like now thinking about the context you just said, it does seem like that was like some sort of weird litmus test for like, can you play? Oh, you don't know like how Marvin Gaye's name is pronounced? Sorry, you'll never be in my rotation.
You're 21 years old. You don't know how Marvin Gaye's name is pronounced. Like, also, like, it's just so funny to me because it's like, we know Paul Reed. Like, Paul Reed listens to like Lil Baby and Future and like all the stuff that 22-year-olds listen to, like things that are of his generation. It's just funny to me that Doc, like, I really do think Doc has this expectation for players, especially younger guys, to like just be like, and like just generally speaking, when it comes to basketball, they need to be perfect. Like they need to be perfect, whereas there will be no accountability when it comes to the Paul Millsaps, the DeAndre Jordans, and last year it was Dwight Howard, like whoever it is. And once again, I do want to put it in perspective. The Sixers weren't supposed to win this game, but that's why it's so frustrating to me. It's like the Sixers were missing their best player. As you said, they're an 8 seed playing against a 1 seed basically, and they need to try to steal this game, which was what I was saying, start the steal and all that shit. Like, I do think that there is a way that you can win. And I think the formula for winning wasn't terrible when you consider the amount of threes that they were trying to put up and all of that shit, and trying to do the zone and the switching and trying to keep Miami on their toes. And by the way, Paul Reed maybe getting a little bit too cocky in the post-game comments. I'm sure Doc loved that one where he basically said, if we put this team on their heels, we could make them fold. And it's like, but at the same time, he's a young guy. He's confident. Like, you really, if that's bulletin board material for the Heat, like, I mean, like, realistically, like, you're going to let the 7th or 8th man on this team get into your head like that and like motivate you? Like, come on.
But you're right about the I do think game one is often the best time to try to steal one if you are an underdog in a road team, because again, like you said, like they don't have tape on what you're trying to do, the unorthodox things you might try. Now they do. They'll find new ways to try to attack that zone. And there's no indication that the Sixers will make the proper adjustment, which is to play small and play Paul Reed, or maybe try Charles Bassey and put DeAndre on ice. And so that makes you less and less confident going into this game. The only thing that gives you a little bit of hope is that maybe the Sixers have just an insane 3-point shooting game up their sleeve, because they were so bad in this game. But that's not something you want to bank on. But I just want to add like one more thing, which is we're talking about like organizational philosophy. Like the Heat last year, when like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus were breaking into the rotation a little bit, like they had older guys in sort of like the wing guard rotation. Like you can have those guys in your roster. Like they had at various points like Avery Bradley and Mo Harkless. They got Trevor Ariza at one point. Like you can, it's not to say like you have to exclusively play young guys. It's just give young guys a chance to compete against older guys and see where the chips fall and see if there's something you can develop. And like even this year, like the Heat, like Bam got hurt. They gave some of those minutes to Dwayne Dedmon, but they also threw Omer Yurtseven out there, who, by the way, has played in this season more NBA minutes than Paul Reed has played in his entire NBA career. And I don't think Omer Yurtseven is anything, but there's a chance that he's for them like a decent Hassan Whiteside-ish before he got the big contract, like type of player. And they're willing to roll the dice and see what's there. And the Sixers just don't seem willing. Like Isaiah Joe still can't, get some consistent run. It just seems like it's a hierarchy based on age and experience. And there's just no way to break that unless something unusual happens, like Ben Simmons sitting out a season. Right. And Tyrese Maxey getting elevated because of it. But other than that, like things like completely out of the norm, it just doesn't seem like there's any willingness to experiment with younger guys. And it just sucks. And they're paying for it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into game two, I just want to say I do think Embiid is gonna play game three. Like I'm 90% positive that he's gonna end up playing in game three. At worst case scenario, he comes back for game four. You just got to hope they can once again steal one. How do you feel heading into game two? Because I feel like last night was the game to steal, as we said before. I feel like game two is going to be a lot tougher now that they can make their own adjustments. The only thing that really gives me hope is Jimmy Butler's clearly injured.
Yes.
Jimmy's like, I don't want Jimmy to be injured. I don't want anyone to ever be injured, but like he's compromised his knee, his arm. They were like looking at his arm at one point. He got like, it's like he has multiple injuries that he's playing through right now. And if Jimmy Butler isn't 100%, then the Sixers have a shot on any given night. Bam Adebayo is going to roast whoever is going against him in the center rotation, but you kind of have to live with that. Yep. Tyler Hero, I'm thinking, isn't going to make every single three that he takes for the rest of his life, even though he looked absolutely fantastic last night. So there are some things that I think could break back into the Sixers' favor if they show some sort of intensity and they come out and they kind of punch Miami in the mouth in game two. So how are you feeling heading into game two, and what will it be going back to Philly on Friday or Saturday, whenever that is?
Yeah, I think it's Friday. I'm not super confident. I would give them maybe a 25% chance to win the game. I do think there are some variance things that could swing back in their favor. And I agree that Butler, not quite looking like Jimmy Butler, does give the series a different flavor. It looks like Kyle Lowry will still be out. And so, I mean, the Heat didn't shoot particularly well either, especially
no, they didn't.
Philly, but I do think they have a shot. Again, I would feel a lot more confident if I thought the Sixers would make the one obvious adjustment that they can make in this series, and I don't think they will. I'll be happy to be proven wrong, but maybe like a 1/4 chance, 25% chance to win this game. But I think they're most likely going down 2-0. I do think overall, again, when you're down 2-0, you have like no margin for error.
Right.
You've got to win 4 out of 5 games. But I would say, like at full strength, I think this everything I saw in game one confirmed why I thought this was a decent matchup for the Sixers. They can really gum up Miami's offense. They have the personnel to do that, even though they're not a good defense. Sixers are not a great defensive team. and they have like key mismatches they can exploit. But once you're down 2-0, like you have to be near perfect. And, I don't know if they'll be able to do that.
Yeah. And like you said pre-podcast, like beating anyone 4 out of 5 games is hard, let alone a good playoff team. Like, I don't think the Heat are contenders. I've capped their ceiling at conference finals appearance. But I also don't think that they are just a team that's going to roll over. Like, they're going to try insanely hard. And while the Sixers can have some advantages, especially if they get Joel Embiid back and they're at full strength, like I could easily see it being, they go down 2-0, then it's 2-2 headed back to Miami type thing. If Joel comes back and he's somewhat normal, and the Sixers have the potential to run Miami off the court in a game or two. Like, I think there is that potential there. Like, I think if Joel Embiid played last night, I think that, and Deandre Jordan was banned from Dade County, we would be up 1-0 right now, and I would feel pretty good about the series heading forward. But all the other things make it so that I am worried, and like it just sucks so much that he got hurt. And by the way, I'm not even mad. I didn't even touch on this, but I'm not mad at Doc for whatever happened with Joel at the end of the last series. Yeah. It was a freak thing. The Sixers blow leads all the time. If they pull them and the Raptors go on a 12-0 run and make it a game again, we're all mad at Doc. So like in that situation, I was fine with it, even though they probably should have pulled the plug a little bit early, like Danny Green said on his podcast. But it is a situation where I feel as though this series is extremely winnable if they can steal this next game and Joel Embiid comes back for game 3. Because then I feel like you're in the driver's seat, to be honest. Because I think 1-1 coming out of this would be incredible result. Because like I feel like everything, like I listened to podcasts talk about this game and I felt like I was losing my mind a little bit. I listened to the Low Post and it was just a Heat love fest. And I was like, the Heat did not look good at all for 2.5 quarters of that game. They looked legitimately not good for the entire first half outside of that first run. Yeah. And if anyone comes out of that matchup thinking that the Heat are going to beat whoever comes out of the Bucks Celtics bracket, they're insane. Like this is this is a good team. This is not a great team. And I think that the Sixers have every opportunity to turn this series around and make it a series at the very least. And especially if Joel Embiid comes back, I feel very good.
Yeah, and I agree with you that I do think game 3 looks more and more likely. And I actually think the worse they look in these first 2 games, the more Joel is going to be agitating to get into that game 3. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks that they're in this position. I'm pretty firm in my conviction that they have, I think, the right personnel to match up with this team. They just are going to be in a situation where I think they're most likely going to be in a situation where like Miami gets, one hot shooting night, they win one in Philly. Now you're down 3-1 and you're pretty much fucked. Like, I just think like it reminds me actually a lot of that. The first year Joel was in the playoffs against Boston, where they play those 2 games at home, they're coming back to Philly down 2-0, and they lose the confetti game. And like, it was just a weird game. I think like most times when that Sixers team played that Celtics team at home, they're going to win. But it only takes one weird game once you're down 2-0 to be basically out of a series. And I think that's like the edge they're going to be pushed to. That's the brink they're going to be at when they come back to Philly. Again, hope to be proven wrong. Hope they just come out and just fucking like shoot like 55% from 3 or something. Miami, but it's just like that's unlikely.
The pressure is certainly going to be on the Sixers if they come back down 2-0 and it's Joel Embiid's first game back. We know how those things can go. And by the way, I love Sixers fans. I love Philly fans. Don't boo them when they get down early. Like, cause like if that ever happens, like we saw that game 5 and I felt like, look, if you want to boo them after the game, you want to do whatever, you can do whatever you want to do. But during the game, it's so frustrating when you watch other teams and their crowd never is like negative towards them until unless something really bad happens, basically. But like it does feel as though this Sixers team, there's a lot of guys who can get into their own heads. And it feels like if the crowd is booing at the end of the game, then the team, I don't want to say they're going to give up, but like it was affecting their shooting in that game 5. Like they couldn't hit an open shot, and it felt like they were all pressing. And I just wish that like we would have a little, like basketball's a game of runs. Like people go on runs. Like we went down 17 in game 3. We came all the way back and won. Like shit happens in basketball in the 3-point era. There's a lot of highs and lows. And I just wish the fans had a little bit more patience for the team so they could kind of get themselves back into a game before we're like, nah, first half, fuck you.
I actually thought Miami has a weird advantage because, I mean, their crowd was like, that was like the worst playoff crowd I've ever heard in my life.
It's bad.
I tweeted that it sounded like a preseason game in the first half. And like when Miami was really struggling in like the second quarter, it was like the fans were like, all right, let's just see what's up on like Twitter. Like they just went on their phones.
Yeah.
And like the Heat were just like, all right, cool. We'll ride this out. They came out at halftime. They played better. You know, the fans got into it. It was like probably a relief, or it's like a weird strategic advantage that like when the Heat start playing badly, their fans just kind of like check out.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, Jack Harlow just posted on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, let's see what's happening at the Clevelander tonight. Like, yeah,
exactly. They got, what I'm trying to say is I know I am guilty of this. We are all guilty of this. We need to stop being such sickos and investing all of our mental health and wellness into the Sixers, because this is why we do it. And like in Miami, they're like, oh shit. Like we got things to do. We got whatever. Like the Heat are just a part of our lives. Yeah. They aren't our lives, and that is one factor that you're going to get with the passion of Sixers fans from both ends of the spectrum. But
the jet skis waiting in the dock. Like who gives a shit? Like
yeah, exactly.
Win or lose, I live in Miami. You know, yeah.
Win or lose, I'm going to the beach after this.
Yeah. It was an interesting crowd. I actually thought the crowd was like one of the stranger crowds I've ever heard in a playoff game. Like it was just like totally disconnected from the game for large stretches of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it probably helped them a little bit when they couldn't hit a shot. And they truly, not only couldn't hit a shot in the second quarter, like they like couldn't get into offense. That was like as bad as you'll see like a, you know, heavy favorite look in a playoff game, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess credit.
That isn't the Sixers.
Except for the Sixers, exactly. But like, credit to them, they kind of pulled themselves out of it.
We're kind of the Spider-Man meme right now with like this is last year's Sixers team basically with the Heat, number 1 seed. You know, like there's a lot of parallels there for sure. But, I appreciate you coming on. I will put your Twitter in the description so everyone can follow you. He's one of the best followers on Sixers Twitter, so please go support him. And anything else you want to plug, or is that it?
No, man, just it's cool for me to do this. It was cathartic.
Hell yeah.
Love the pod, and I just keep doing what you're doing. I never really considered myself a part of Sixers Twitter, to be honest, because when I got into Twitter, it was like for completely different reasons. But I have like backslid all the way into Sixers Twitter. Now it sort of seems to be like one of my dominant like online like presences, and I'm conflicted about it, but most of the time I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to be. It's
both the worst and best place to be. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
it really, it's you just have to, sometimes you have to bathe in the sickness, and other times I have to mute everyone on my timeline where you're just like, I'm having a bad mental health day and I can't take you complaining about Furkan Korkmaz shooting whatever. Even though I feel the same way, I just can't have the negativity around me at all times. But once again, thanks so much, and I'll definitely have you back on in the future. Peace.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Tro.